In 1955, the American dream wasn't a metaphor or a distant goal for the lucky few. It was a mathematical reality that you could achieve at 23 years old with a single average salary. Imagine a world where a young man, fresh out of high school, working at a local plant or a modest office, could walk into a sales office and buy a brand new 3-bedroom home for just $8,000. To most of us today, that sounds like a fairy tale. In the modern world, the average American needs decades of debt, 2 full-time professional incomes, and a massive stroke of luck just to afford the down payment on a fixer-upper. But in the 1950s, the math was different. The economy was built for the worker, and your time actually represented a significant chunk of the world around you. How did we go from houses that cost 2 times your annual salary to properties that cost 10 times what you earn? Tonight, we're traveling back to 1955 to see exactly what life felt like when one single paycheck was enough to buy it all. To understand the 1950s, we have to look at the average Joe. In 1955, the median household income in the United States was roughly $4,400 a year. Now, that number might sound tiny, but you have to look at its pull. In 1955, money had weight. It had gravity. If you were making that $4,400, you weren't just surviving, you were thriving. At that time, only about 3% of married women worked outside the home. This wasn't just a social norm, it was an economic possibility. One person worked 40 hours a week, and the entire family lived a life of dignity. Let's look at the biggest purchase of your life, the house. In 1955, the average price of a new home was approximately $10,950. Do the math with me, because this is the part that hurts. That means a house cost just 2.5 times the average annual salary. Today, with the median home price hovering over $400,000 and the median income around $75,000, that ratio has exploded to over 5.5 times, and in cities like New York or Los Angeles, it's often 10 or 12 to 1. In the 50s, the mortgage wasn't a death sentence. A typical monthly house payment was around $60. Think about that. $60 a month for a piece of the earth, a roof over your head, and a place to raise your children. That was less than what many families spent on groceries and leisure. There was a sense of breathing room. You didn't feel like you were one missed paycheck away from the sidewalk. The house was an anchor, not a weight dragging you under. But it wasn't just the big-ticket items. Life in 1955 was affordable in a way that's hard to wrap our heads around today. Let's go for a drive. You pull your brand new Chevy Bel Air, which cost you about $2,000 total, into a gas station. A gallon of gas is 23 cents. You hand the attendant a $5 bill. He fills the tank, washes your windows, checks your oil, and hands you back a handful of change. You head to the grocery store. A loaf of bread is 18 cents. A dozen eggs, 61 cents. A pound of prime ground beef, 45 cents. A $20 bill could fill the trunk of your car with enough food to feed a family of 4 for a week. Today, $20 might get you a bag of oranges and a gallon of milk, if you're lucky. In the 1950s, the cost of living didn't feel like a predatory force. It felt stable. If you wanted to take the family out to the movies, it was 50 cents a ticket. A hamburger at the new local stand, 15 cents. Because the basics, housing, food, and transport were so cheap, the extra money in your pocket felt like a fortune. This was the era where people started buying the first modern luxuries, the big refrigerators, the washers, the black and white TV sets. And they were buying them with savings, not credit cards, not high-interest buy now, pay later schemes. They were buying their lives with their time, and the trade was fair. There's a specific feeling that existed in 1955 that has almost vanished today, and that's predictability. In the 50s, you knew that if you showed up to your job, worked your shift, and stayed loyal to your company, the system would take care of you. You didn't need a side hustle. You didn't need to learn a new digital skill every 6 months just to stay relevant. You didn't need to drive for a rideshare app after your 9 to 5. When you walked through that front door at 5:30 p.m., you were done. Your time was yours. The house was paid for, the car was in the driveway, and there was enough in the bank for a rainy day. But as we look at these images of perfect lawns and shiny cars, we have to ask the uncomfortable question. If it was this simple, if the math worked so well for the average worker, why does it feel so impossible now? Did we just become unproductive? Are we just spending too much on lattes and smartphones? Or did something fundamental in the way we value a human being's labor change while we weren't looking? In 1955, one salary bought a life. Today, 2 salaries often buy a struggle. But the reason why isn't just inflation, it's much deeper than that. To understand why that 1950s paycheck felt so heavy and why yours feels so light today, we have to look at the contract that was quietly rewritten. In 1955, if a company made more money, the worker made more money. There was a direct link between the strength of the economy and the thickness of your wallet. But starting in the early 1970s, those gears uncoupled. American workers kept getting more productive. We got faster, we got smarter, we used better tools. But the reward for that productivity, it stopped going to the worker. It started flowing elsewhere. This is where the modern squeeze began. Because we could no longer buy that 1950s house with our actual wages, we were offered a substitute: debt. In 1955, a 30-year mortgage was a choice, not a desperate necessity. Most people aimed to pay their homes off as fast as possible. Today, we've normalized 30-year or even 40-year loans just to get through the front door. We replaced purchasing power with borrowing power. We started using credit cards to buy the groceries that our grandfathers bought with the spare change in their pockets. We started taking out 5-year loans for cars that used to cost 6 months of salary. In the 1950s, you were a saver. Today, the system forces you to be a borrower. And this shift changed the very nature of our time. When you buy a house on one salary in 1955, you own your life. When you buy a house on 2 salaries and a massive debt in 2026, the bank owns your life, and you were just the one doing the work to pay for it. But it's not just the debt, it's the devaluation. In 1955, a dollar was a store of value. You could put it under your mattress, and 5 years later, it still bought almost the same amount of milk. Today, money has an expiration date. If you leave your money sitting still, it's melting. It's losing its strength every single day. This forces you into a frantic race. You can't just work and be done. You have to be a financial analyst. You have to invest. You have to watch the markets. You have to find hustles. The peace of the 1950s was replaced by the anxiety of the modern era. The $9,000 house in 1955 wasn't just cheap. It was a reflection of a world where the dollar was solid. Today, that same house is $450,000, not because the house got 40 times better, but because the dollar got 40 times weaker. You are paying for the devaluation of the currency, and you are paying for it with the hours of your life. This brings us to the most uncomfortable truth of all, the two-income trap. By the late 1970s, as the one-salary dream began to fade, families found a solution. The mother entered the workforce in record numbers. At first, this looked like a financial miracle. Suddenly, households had two paychecks. They were rich, right? Wrong. Because every family now had two incomes, they all started bidding more for the same limited number of houses in good neighborhoods. The price of everything rose to meet the new two-income standard. In 1955, if the father lost his job, the family had a safety valve. The mother could go to work to keep the family afloat. Today, both parents are already working at 100% capacity. If one loses a job, the family is 30 days away from a total collapse. We have more money coming in, but we have less security than ever before. We are working twice as much for a life that feels half as stable. So, was 1955 a paradise? No, it had its own deep flaws, social inequalities, and a lack of modern medicine. We have better TVs today, we have faster internet, we have rights that didn't exist back then, but we have to be honest about what we traded away for those luxuries. We traded time for stuff. We have a world of high-tech gadgets, but we lost the economic breathing room that allowed a human being to support a family on 40 hours of work a week. The story of the last 70 years isn't just about rising prices. It's about the fact that our time, the actual minutes and hours of our lives, has been devalued. We are the most productive generation in human history, yet we are the most stressed about how to pay for a roof over our heads. The 1955 salary could buy a house because the system was designed to build a middle class. Today, the system is designed to extract value from your labor as fast as possible. As we look back at those old photos of 1950s suburbs, we aren't just looking at old houses, we are looking at a version of freedom that was taken from us, quietly, 1 year at a time. The $10,000 house is gone. The 25-cent gallon of gas is a memory, but the lesson remains. Money is just a way to measure the value of your life, and in the modern world, your life is becoming the most expensive thing you will ever own. Perhaps the real question isn't why houses are so expensive, but why we ever agreed to a system where our hard work buys us less of our own lives every single year. Your bank account tells you how much money you have, but it will never tell you how much your time is actually worth.